Hi, I'm Nicholas Sperling. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about what I hate about being trans. I want to preface this by saying that I wouldn't change my transition for anything. All of these things that I hate about being trans are still far better than not transitioning. Now, with that said, let's get to it. Let's start with the dysphoria. This is a big one that a lot of trans people deal with. I deal with this just like many trans people do. I look at myself in the mirror. I still see characteristics of myself that I view as manly. Not that there is really any such thing. Every aspect of me that I would consider to be manly. There are many cis women that have those same aspects of their bodies. But it's something that I struggle with nonetheless. I look at my broader shoulders and I'm not pleased with them. I look at my brow line and I think it looks too deep. I have some issues with where the fat deposits on my body, but ultimately I'm much happier in the body that I'm in right now than I ever was in the body that I had before I started transitioning. When it comes to appearance, I think facial hair is the biggest issue that I've had to deal with. I have gone and spent a lot of time and a lot of money on electrolysis and on laser sessions. I didn't make it all the way through. It was far too painful for me to feel that it was worthwhile once I got past a certain point, and at this point I shave occasionally, and that's better for me than going and repeating that process. But the feel of my facial hair is still an issue, and I just wish it wasn't the case that I had to choose between feeling my facial hair, seeing my facial hair, or getting it removed through all of these painful and expensive procedures. Another one would be GCS. We are quite lucky that gender confirmation surgery here in Canada is covered, so the expense side of things is a little bit less concerning. However, you do have to take a significant amount of time off work, and there's also the expense of flying to Montreal if you are getting your surgery done there versus the new clinic that's recently opened up here in BC. Now, cost is a big one. For me, I've had 2 procedures, GCS and electrolysis, that have been quite costly and quite time-consuming and ultimately impacted my life in quite a variety of ways, the results of which have been very positive, but this is an impact to my life that wouldn't be the case if I was cisgender. When we're talking about costs, we can also talk about the fact that you have to get a whole new wardrobe, and there could be any number of other reasons for you to have to spend money if you're transitioning. My experience is not going to be the same as your experiences, and every person goes through their transition in a different way, whether that's through different procedures or different products that they want, or clothing, or whatever it may be. Something that I've touched on before in other videos is finding a job, and when I transitioned I found that my success rate when it came to handing out resumes and receiving callbacks, and also with regard to actually getting a job if I went in for an interview, dropped. I went from sending out 2 resumes and getting 1 callback to sending out 200 resumes to get 1 callback. There's a drastic difference that I noticed once I was out as trans, and for me I was out very publicly, so I didn't really have the ability to hide that I'm trans in a job interview. You Google my name and automatically you find out that I'm trans. Then there's the feeling of lost experiences. When you look back at your life, you look at all of those experiences that you had, and when I look back at my life, I see a lot of experiences that I had as my inauthentic self that I wish I was able to relive as my authentic self. And that's something I really have to focus on, making new experiences or trying to do something similar. If it was an activity that I really enjoyed doing, say as a child, maybe I try doing it as an adult now so I can experience that as my authentic self. And essentially it's all just about realizing that I can't go back and change my past, but I can change my future, change my present to match what I want to be doing, the experiences that I want to have, and make those experiences so that my future self can look back and realize that I did everything possible to have all of those experiences as my authentic self. Sexism is something that I've had to deal with, and this is just your run-of-the-mill sexism because when I walk around the world now, I'm perceived as a woman, and along with that comes the sexism that all women face. And that's been something that I've really had to adjust to, because it's not men running around discriminating against women in very obvious ways. What it is are very minor things within society where you realize that men or women are not treated equally, that men's voices are more respected than women's in a lot of scenarios. Men are still expected to pay for everything. Women are expected to look pleasing to the eye, whereas men are given a bit more of a pass on that. Women have a much harder time finding clothing. Men don't. These are all very typical stereotypes. And as a woman, as a man, you don't have to live up to those stereotypes, but it is pressure that's being put on you externally from society saying, this is how we think you should behave. I get frustrated over very small things, like the fact that I used to always open doors for other people. Now other people are opening doors for me, and it's not an equal distribution of kindness. It's a situation where now I can be at a door, open it for someone else to go through, and what I've noticed is, particularly if they're an older man, they will just stand there and they won't walk through. They won't let me open the door for them. They will force me to walk through that door while they hold it open. And it's little things that you may not notice as a cisgender person, but that as a trans person, having experienced it from being perceived as a man to being perceived as a woman, I take note of, and I recognize the differences that are at play there. Relationships as a trans person are very challenging. It's extremely difficult to meet a person just in public because it can be a dangerous situation. At what point do you disclose that you're trans, and what is their reaction going to be if they're not entering into this with that knowledge up front? When I date online and I put in my dating profiles that I'm trans. I get far less responses that way, but it helps me to weed through the people that I wouldn't want to be with anyway. But dating isn't just uncomfortable for a lot of trans people. For a lot of trans people, it can be downright dangerous. And you have to be really careful who you're going home with, who you are coming out to, where you're coming out to them. We talk about the fact that women are in danger on dates all the time. Trans people have that experience as well, particularly trans women. And then you add on top of that the disclosure of trans status, and you can just create a whole potentially dangerous scenario. Finally, one of the big issues that I have is judgment. And this can be either me feeling like I'm judged, and that's something that I need to work on myself. I need to deal with my own insecurities around feeling judged. But some of it has to do with how society in general judges trans people. That could be other trans people policing what they believe to be the right way of being trans, and there is no right way of being trans. Everyone has their own way of being. We're all unique human beings. And some of it has to do with the cisgender population thinking that, again, we have to act a certain way in order to be valid. Whether that's a trans woman being told that they're acting too feminine or too masculine, and therefore their identity is invalid. And when you think about it, how do you not end up in one of those extremes? Everyone's going to have their own idea of what they think too feminine or too masculine is, and at the end of the day, you're never going to be acceptable to everyone. I think ultimately the key here is you don't have to be acceptable to everyone. You don't have to make everyone like you. You can just be yourself, and if some people don't like who that is, that's on them. I speak out a lot against people who actively try to discriminate against trans people, but when it comes to an individual person that is not spreading a message of hate, that's just being unaccepting of who I am, my time is better served just walking away from them. I don't need them in my life. If someone is going to truly accept you for who you are, they need to accept you for who you are, not for who they think you should be. So you will have people that say, oh, of course I accept you as trans, but you need to behave this way to be an appropriate trans person, to be respectable, to be valid, to be authentic, whatever it might be. Screw it. You don't need to do that. I don't need to do that. None of us need to live up to some artificial standard. We can just be ourselves. As long as you're not harming someone else, you do you, and we're gonna be in a much better world if we all do that. So to bring this back to what I said at the beginning, which is that despite all of these negatives, all of these things that I hate about being trans, ultimately I'm far happier now than I ever was before. There are all of these aspects that I hate about being trans that would have been solved if I was just born a cis woman, but you can't change the path that your life has taken. You can't change how you were born. There are things that you just simply can't change that you need to learn to live with. And for me, it's been accepting that I'm trans, accepting that there are parts of my appearance, there are parts of the way that I'm treated that are not going to change anytime soon at least. And I'm doing what I can to adjust my physical appearance and the way that I live my life so that I can be as comfortable and happy as possible. And the person that I am now is far more comfortable and far happier than the person that I was before I started transitioning. I don't want to sugarcoat what it's like to be trans. There are difficult aspects. It's not a matter of realizing that you're trans, transitioning, and suddenly life's great. I don't want to go out into the world lying to you, pretending that everything's going to be fine as soon as you transition. That's not the case. But things get better, and things continue to get better with time. Where I was when I started my transition was one of my lowest points, and it's been a pretty steady uphill climb since then. That's going to be different obviously for everyone, as it is with anything. Being trans is not perfect. No one is perfect. But all of these hardships that I mentioned in this video are so worth it to get to where I am right now. And I hope that if you're watching this and you're in those beginning stages of your transition, that you're going to realize how much better life can get, that you're going to hold on to that hope. And if you're a cis person that's watching this, I hope you've learned something today. I hope that you're not here for the clickbait of trying to hear a trans person rant about what's going wrong in their life so you can criticize trans people. I hope that you've heard what I've said, that you understand a little bit more about what it means to be trans, and that you're a little bit more empathetic to trans people around you. If you liked this video, please consider subscribing to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you get notified every time I post a new video. If you have ideas for topics that you want me to cover in future videos, please leave them in the comments down below. And until next time, have a great day.